1908, a team of archaeologists working through a limestone cave near La Chapelle-aux-Saints in southern France pulled something out of the ground that stopped them cold. A skeleton, nearly complete and visibly deeply worn. The man's spine had been ravaged by arthritis. His hip joint had deteriorated so badly that walking must have been painful. He had lost most of his teeth. Old healed fractures marked his jaw. The bones told the story of a body that had been through an enormous amount of life and somehow kept going anyway. The initial assumption was that this person had been diseased, an anomaly. He imagined a stooped, shambling creature hunched forward, bent at the knees, more ape than human. That image defined how the world pictured Neanderthals for the better part of a century. But the stooping wasn't who this person was, it was just old age. Scientists later estimated this Neanderthal had lived into his 60s, a man who had survived decades of prehistoric life, who had been cared for by the people around him through injury and illness, and who eventually died carrying decades of memory in a world where there was no other place to put it. Ancient humans died before 30, sometimes it's 25. The message is always the same: life was brutally short. So, how do we explain the old man of La Chapelle? The answer is a story about math, about childhood. Imagine waking before sunrise with no medicine behind you, no hospitals, no antibiotics, no understanding of what a germ actually is. Your entire day centers immediately on one problem: staying alive. A cut across the palm, something most people today forget about by the following week, could spiral into a fatal crisis. Bacteria enters, infection sets in, a fever arrives with no explanation. The people around you can keep you warm, bring water, and hope. That was the complete range of available treatment. And without antibiotics, what seems minor today killed in enormous numbers. Food was a chronic source of tension. One failed hunt is disappointing. Two in a row is worrying. A third failure, and the entire camp feels it. Children need to eat, adults need energy to keep going out and searching, and nobody knows when the next opportunity will come. A wounded boar can turn and gore. A cornered deer can kick hard enough to shatter bone. Ancient skeletons carry that evidence: healed fractures, crushed joints, breaks that fused at odd angles. Then there were the predators. For most of our existence, our ancestors weren't apex predators. They were closer to prey. Leopards hunted early hominins consistently enough that scientists have found tooth marks pressed directly into ancient hominin skulls. Hyenas equipped with jaws built to crack bone ran our ancestors down across open terrain. Cave lions competed for the same rock shelters that early humans relied on for protection. Nightfall beyond the fire wasn't an abstract fear, it was a genuine recurring problem that had to be survived. And then consider childbirth. The human brain grew large enough that birth became one of the most dangerous moments in a person's life. A difficult delivery could kill the infant, the mother, or both. Every person alive today is the product of generation after generation, somehow navigating that without any of the tools we now take for granted. But here's the kicker: most adults weren't dying at 30. The number is concealing something, and once you see what it's hiding, the entire picture changes. Here is how the math actually works. Take 10 children. Half don't survive past their second year. The remaining 5 live into their 60s. What is the average lifespan across the entire group? Work it out, and you get roughly 31 years. But look at what actually happened. No one died at 31. Half were gone before they learned to talk. The other half became old people. The average is technically correct. The story it tells is almost entirely wrong. It describes medieval England, where life expectancy at birth sat around 30 years. But someone who survived to age 25 in that same era could expect roughly 25 more years beyond that, putting them comfortably into their 50s. Someone who reached 40 could realistically hope to see 60. The birth figure absorbs every death across an entire lifetime: the infant who lived 3 days, the child who didn't make it through winter. The figure that gets quoted is always life expectancy at birth. And for most of human history, that figure was dragged down almost entirely by what happened to children. Research on traditional hunter-gatherer communities found that roughly 38% of children died before age 15, nearly 4 in 10. In modern Japan or Sweden, that rate sits below 0.5%. Picture a school classroom, 30 children at their desks. Take 11 of them away, not because they moved, because they didn't survive. That was the reality of childhood across most of human history. Families knew it, communities planned around it, and yet people still laughed, still fell in love, still made plans and raised children of their own. Because people have an extraordinary capacity for moving forward even through enormous loss. Bones pulled from prehistoric sites tell a consistent story. People reached their 50s, some reached their 60s. These weren't anomalies, they were members of real communities, cared for, valued, kept alive because their presence meant something. The old man of La Chapelle wasn't a medical miracle. He was proof of something the birth statistic had quietly erased. Now think about what that presence actually meant in a world where nothing was written down. No maps, no books, no records of any kind. Every piece of knowledge a community carried where water still ran in a drought, which plants turned poisonous after flooding. All of it lived in exactly one place, human memory. So the oldest members of the group weren't just survivors. They were the only archive the community had. Lose one and whatever they carried disappeared with them, permanently. In the 1990s, anthropologist Kristen Hawkes began studying Hadza forager communities in Tanzania and found something that shifted how scientists think about aging. When a mother had a new infant, her older children's nutrition stopped tracking the mother's own foraging work, it tracked the grandmother's. Older women who were no longer bearing children were foraging for tubers and sharing food in ways that directly improved grandchildren's survival measurably in the data. Old age in that context wasn't a burden the community absorbed. It was a contribution the community depended on. Some researchers believe this helps explain why human lifespans stretch so much longer than those of our closest primate relatives. Grandparents improved the odds that grandchildren survived. Elders transmitted knowledge that couldn't be stored any other way. Old age wasn't a side effect of biology, it was selected for because it turned out to be genuinely useful. So, if you walked into that ancient camp, yes, you'd notice the children. The camp would feel young. But that youth would be shaped partly by absence by all the very young who never made it through. Stay long enough and you'd notice the other faces. The woman who remembered where water had still moved during the last drought. The man with the worn spine who knew things no one younger had been alive to learn. The people who were in the most literal sense irreplaceable because everything they carried existed nowhere else. Those elders were real. The birth statistic just had a habit of making them invisible. The real tragedy of ancient life wasn't adults expiring in their 30s. It was enormous numbers of children who never got to 30 at all. That is what drove the average down. Not a biological wall. Not bodies failing before middle age. Children who never got the chance. And one of civilization's quietest achievements, clean water vaccines, antibiotics, safer childbirth, didn't create old age. Old age had always been achievable. The old man of La Chapelle proved that in bone. Buried in a French cave with his worn spine and his healed jaw and his 60-some years. What those things did was make the whole journey survivable from the very beginning. Not just for the ones fortunate enough to clear the earliest, most dangerous years. For everyone. Thank you for watching and sticking till the end. We've got plenty more videos coming in the future. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss them. See you in the next.